Welcome back, everybody, to the Leadership Void podcast. Enrique and Vince here today. We have a local visitor, and we're so happy to go back into Florida and highlight exciting veterans doing some great things. Vince will introduce.
Oh, absolutely. I'm excited. Happy November, first of all, everyone out there, all our audience and our listeners. Jared Narlock, he is the founder of Peaceful Powered Leadership. He's going to tell us all about that. But first, let's dive in and talk about Jared. Jared, just share a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thank you. And thank you both for having me. Really appreciate it. And I am, first and foremost, I always like to share that and appreciate that about both of you, a veteran of the United States Air Force. And so spent 6 years, and it's actually where I found my passion for what I do today. I'm a talent development coach and a speaker and author, but that started while I was in the Air Force. My last 4 years were a special duty assignment as an instructor. And so I got to learn adult education and really found I had a passion for working with people. And so I've been doing that for about 17 years as an internal consultant in organizations, as a director and a vice president, and then externally. And that's where Peaceful Power Leadership came from, where I get to work with leaders and their teams on how they communicate, how they build trust, how they connect in different ways, and step into sometimes having those difficult conversations that ultimately lead to higher levels of trust. And so the biggest thing about me is I love working with people, helping them grow and develop and inspire them to take action on that learning. And I do reside just outside of Orlando with my wife and son.
Outstanding. We're so grateful for your service, Jared. Thank you for that. Thank you for being on the leadership front. You know, the leadership void is what we do, and you're filling those voids in your area. Now, tell me a little bit about this exciting company, Peaceful Powered Leadership. I love the name of that.
Yeah, that came out of some of the work that happened after I was a director of learning and organizational development and eventually promoted into vice president of talent development. And from there, a director of people and organizational development. So some wonderful titles, but as we know, that title doesn't necessarily make us a leader. And so I did well in those roles. But what I saw in myself and some of my coaching clients were different leaders who said, hey, I'm trying to do the best that I can. I'm trying to serve my people. I'm trying to get the organization, the metrics that they're asking for. But at the end of the day, I'm exhausted and I don't feel like I'm giving what I would hope to any of those areas. And so I went on a journey because I had experienced that in my leadership roles to say, okay, there has to be a better way. And at the same time, was coming across these data points from places like Gallup that had organizations, they had done this survey that organizations said over 8 out of the 10 leaders that they had hired, they felt weren't the right fit for the roles. And at the same time, you had over 60% of these leaders saying, hey, we had no type of training or development when we stepped into those roles. And so certainly a big gap. And through a process of talking with some different thought leaders, through self-exploration, I found what I really titled as Peaceful Powered Leadership. And so it was through that inspiration that I developed the company and started doing that work with companies across the country in their leadership and professional development to really work towards what does that mean? The fact that we can be powerful in our leadership, but we can also have a peaceful approach. And sometimes people don't think about those words coming together, but truly we can be clear and we can also be direct and at the same time kind and be powered by that through these areas. And so it's been a journey for me that ultimately has led to being able to live my purpose to help others in that process.
Living your purpose is right, Jared. And I'll say, my wife says this quote, we come in peace and we have you, but we have you surrounded and peacefully. But it's a great thing that you do because 60%, as you mentioned, are within that capability. They have the void, as us, the leadership void, right? So yes, having you there, having us there in the front of making sure they get the tools they need to be better leaders is a great thing. So thank you for sharing about the journey and how you evolved peaceful, powered leadership. So what is on the menu for your company and how are you holding up with this current pandemic?
Last year was tough as for so many other people, but now I'm seeing a surge, especially for peaceful power leadership, where leaders are reaching out and they're looking to really, one, how to navigate some of these organizations. They went from being everybody in the office to now some are in the office, some are remote, and so they're trying to figure out different communication styles. So as an organization, it's going really well since probably the beginning of 2021. Very thankful for that. And I've been able to capitalize on some of the pieces. I'm certified in Dr. Brene Brown's Dare to Lead, which that's really been a big one because people are interested in that. And sometimes that's what they're looking for. Other times it's through that they find peaceful power leadership, and we talk about what may be the right thing for that leader and their team or that company. And most of the groups that I work with, I'm working in 6-month engagements to really build on. I enjoy doing keynotes. I enjoy doing a one and done workshop, but it's really hard. It's hard for people to take that, soak it in, and make those application habits because they're already busy. And so what I have on the horizon and continue to do is work with teams that really want to work in that 6 to 12 month arena, and working with them once or twice a month on the application aspect from the awareness of the information that we've done in workshops, and them saying, okay, how does this impact me individually? And then how does it impact my team? Because it's a journey, and it's a unique journey for each and every individual. And so that's part of my process is helping them in that journey, whether it be through one-on-one coaching with some of the different coaching clients, or a mix of that one-on-one coaching and then the in-person or virtual workshops. And it has just been a pleasure. And it's been to the point now where I'm having to decide, I'm at that threshold of, hey, can I take on more, or am I tapped out for the next few months?
Well, I love that dilemma where
Yes.
you gotta
Yeah, it's a
be
good one.
wondering, how busy you're gonna be, and so great that you have developed this, and now you're true to what the situation and environment is. Things are gearing up. People are once again entreating folk to come in, train their folks, and so what's on the horizon for peaceful powered leadership as we enter this transition period?
It's really interesting to see what people are asking for, because they almost have a new reality, and that new reality of understanding that through the pandemic, people started to talk about their emotions in different ways. People started to step into vulnerability in different ways. And so that's a big piece that I focus on is helping these organizations identify what does that mean for them, and how do they connect if I'm in the office each day and you're virtual each day, remote, knowing that we're still meeting, but I don't have that physical presence. And some people thought, hey, we can only get to those deep level areas of growing and extending trust when we're together, which I love to be in the same room as people, right? I love connectedness, but we can still get that over the virtual environment. And so on the horizon is helping organizations more and more navigate through that, and help them figure out how do they connect, and how do they stay mindful of both the physical and emotional well-being in the process, because it's different. I just spoke with a group about 2 weeks ago that they realized a lot of their people were saying, hey, we had to navigate through the offices, and we go out and we walk around, and now we're on the computer each and every day. And so they were looking at how can we continue that physical well-being, because they saw the impact it was making on their emotional well-being, and really looking at how can they create habits. Because I love the work of Dr. BJ Fogg, his book, Tiny Habits. And in there, he talks about it's truly our emotions that create habits. And so helping them explore their emotions to figure out what habits do they want to create. And that's different. That's different than the work that I was doing 2 years ago, where people were saying, hey, we want to grow and extend trust and communication this way. Now I see them, and it's really challenged me in my growth and development to get into more of a grittier reality of the work that it takes to do that.
A grittier reality indeed. And one in our earlier survey in season 1, it came out with listening was so important. Now, even more so when you're on the virtual reality scene, because You have to listen attentively, actively, and empathically. And you don't have that physical being, so you have to very much be in tune. So I love that, going from the intellectual to the emotional and connecting both, because it is a one being, a one soul. But we really understand we need more physical contact, social contact. But you're bringing that into the virtual world. That's a great mix, Jared. So let's talk about you yourself. You were an instructor in the Air Force, and as you developed through the ranks, what professional development did you or do you work on to improve your capabilities as a leader?
Sure. One of the biggest things is coaching. I'm just about finished with my re-credentialing. I'm credentialed through the International Coach Federation, and I have my ACC, and I'm renewing that. I'll actually put in the paperwork at the beginning of next month to renew. But that's my goal over the next few years, is to go from an associate certified coach to a PCC, that next level, and always looking to grow and develop. And it was a big thing that I took away from my time in the Air Force. While I was in the Air Force, I got my bachelor's degree. I used the GI Bill to get my master's degree. And I would always tell the different troops that I had the privilege to serve, hey, the Air Force may ask a lot of you, but they also will invest so much in you and figure out how you want to utilize those resources and continue that. And it was those pieces that I learned while I was in the military that have carried through to remember that, hey, I am in charge of my locus of control. I can take those next steps. And so the coaching piece is a big one. And then continuing to do the work through the Dare to Lead program. That's one of my favorite pieces, one of the best pieces of learning and development out there through Dr. Brene Brown. And it's helped me grow my skill set by seeing how she's laid things out and how I can help different teams and organizations in that. And so those are probably the two biggest things that I have on the horizon that I'm working for on my growth and development.
Outstanding to hear. And you mentioned the troops, and it always takes me back to service, right? There was a lot that you may have learned as you was growing up in your time of service, and some of those things may have stuck with you along the way. Would you care to share some of those with emerging leaders that are coming up now that may benefit from those same learning?
Sure. That is one of the biggest ones that I didn't see it so much when I was in the Air Force, but it really hit me. And it's one of the Air Force core values. It's integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all we do. And that service before self, I always wondered, because I would ask different people, hey, what does that mean to you? And you got a lot of different answers. And it was in my time as an emerging leader from an executive standpoint. I was new to vice president role. I was reporting to the CEO, and the CEO discussed with me, and he said, Jared, I know you love what you do. You love the talent development area, but as an executive in the organization, you have to remember that you've got to take care of the organization first. And sometimes that means that it's going to be a decision that may be hard for your team, but it's in the best interest of the organization. And it really hit me, because in that moment, I also realized, there have been times where I've went to self-preserve versus truly serving others, and that service before self and truly understanding what that meant. And I got to see another more seasoned executive, and it was 3 of us in the room, and there were more than that, but 3 of us in those executive roles that were figuring out this next steps of a decision. And for myself and the one other individual, it was a clear choice. It was right for the organization. It was also going to be right for our teams. But for that third individual, while that person knew it was right for the organization, it was going to be very tough for their team. And they knew they were going to have to deliver that message. They knew it was going to be a bumpy road over the next 2 years. And I remember that leader stepping forward and saying, hey, I'm going to make this easy for us to move forward, because we were all kind of tiptoeing around it, knowing that this is going to be tough. How do we get this person on agreement? And the individual said, this is what's right for the organization. And I have trust in my team. They have trust in me. We're going to get through this together, but I'm going to make this an easy decision for all, because we know that that's what's right. Knowing that it wasn't the best for him and his team. And they did get through it. And it was a great outcome. And they actually learned a lot. They helped the company that we were partnering with on the contract through that process. And it showed me in that moment what courageous leadership looked like. And he knew my people aren't going to be happy about this, but this is truly what's right. And this is not the self-preservation decision, but really the service to others decision. And so that's something that I always share with emerging leaders is know your values is what it comes down to. And those values help be that guiding light when maybe we're thinking, oh, I need to self-preserve right now, but instead saying as a leader, I want to serve others. And that's going to be a hard decision. But if I can connect it to my values, it makes it a much easier decision.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, because bumpy roads is all that we face a lot of times. And folks don't realize how many of those we have. And that drives into the question of challenges, right? And being the courageous leader, as you mentioned, through that example. Thank you. How do you, Jared, handle challenges either you're currently facing or have faced in the past?
I go to my values. That was a big piece, part of that exploration. And I used to be one that thought, oh, I've got 7, 8 values. And a lot of people that I talk to, they'll share that as well. But what I really found after doing some work around this is the reality that really 2 of those were my firm, I'm not going to budge values. The rest were things that I wanted to be associated with. There were things that I would like to be associated with. But when it came down to those challenges and deciding, hey, what's the next step going to be? It boiled down to those 2 areas. And that was a tough one. I had a time in my career where I was in conflict with those values and I knew it. And I knew the organization that I was a part of, what they were asking at times was in conflict and some of the things occurring. And it ultimately led to me deciding to leave the role. And that was part of that journey that eventually came to developing peaceful power leadership. And I remember having a conversation with my wife when I really locked in on those 2 values. And I said, hey, are you okay if one day I come home and I may not have a role because I decided to do what was right over what was easy? And she said, it's about time. I've seen you struggle with this for the last 1.5 years, and I'm glad you found that. And that was a big part of me finding peace, is stepping into the accountability and knowing, hey, that's where my values are. And so anytime I've got a difficult decision, I start from there, say, okay, how's this connected to my values? And then from there to how does it impact those that I'm serving? How does it impact, those that I'm building up and I'm investing in? And am I letting that self-preservation creep into this? What would I truly be doing if I wasn't thinking about self-preservation? And usually the values help push that one off to the side to remember to serve others. And then what would empowerment be like for myself? What would that look like? And how can I create that environment for others to step into that with their decision making if it's beyond just me making that decision? But really it boils down to those values and the accountability with that, and then going from there.
A wonderful way to face any challenges that may come your way. That is the true point where you are able to decide the right way. So kudos to you on that. And with every challenge comes change. How do you handle change, and how would you suggest someone else would handle change, given your advice?
Change is always a tough one, right? We hear it all the time, and it's becoming more and more of a constant. And it's one of those pieces that I always try to look at the change and say, okay, where is this in regards to what I currently have going on? How is this going to help me? How is it going to impact others? And reminding myself to give myself grace. I don't know about the 2 of you, but I know for myself, I'm my toughest critic. And sometimes I'll ask groups, hey, have you ever said something to yourself that you wouldn't dare say to another human being? And almost every time people raise their hand. And why do we do that, right? Why do we do that? And where I see that happening lots of times is in change, where I'm struggling with change and I forget to take a step back and say, okay, how can I impact this change? What's within my locus of control? And how can I go to the next step? And how do I give myself grace along the way? Because it's not going to go perfect. It's something different. It's something new. And then at the same time, how do I remember to give that grace to others and keep a focus on remembering that each person is typically trying to do their best each day. But the big piece, and I learned this from Dr. Brene Brown, is that our best looks different every day. And that was such a freeing piece for me. In March of 2019, my son had a massive seizure and he had to be life flighted about 3 hours away from where we were living at the time to receive the care that he needed. And he was intubated, and I didn't get to hear his voice for over 24 hours. And I will tell you that the last shift that I worked before that happened and the first shift of me coming back, I was giving my best both days, but my best looked drastically different. And I was going through change, and I had a group around me that extended that grace. And I was so appreciative. And so I always try to remember that when I'm faced with change, of how do I give myself grace in the process while still trying to give my best, and remembering that my best may look different from day to day. Doesn't mean I want to dip below what is needed or what's being asked of me. I want to, go above and beyond, but how do I adjust for that accordingly and learn from those pieces in the change?
Well, thank you for sharing, Jared, about that. And I hope your son is doing much better nowadays than he was back then.
I appreciate that. He is. It's been a journey. He's doing well, though.
Well, gratefully so, and we are grateful that he is. And you shared a lot of pearls of wisdom today with our audience and our listeners, and a lot of being very introspective, your locus of control. Brene Brown sounds like you are an instructor of her Dare to Lead. So folks that would love to know how to either get a hold of you or Peaceful Power Leadership, how do they go about doing so?
The best way is my website, which has some different resources on it and the different coaching opportunities, workshops, things like that. And it is peacefulpowerleadership.com. And then the other way, one of my favorites is LinkedIn. And that's how I met Enrique, through LinkedIn. And that is always a place that if you're willing, you can connect, meet some amazing people. And it's always interesting from that veteran perspective, some of the veterans that I didn't serve with, but we found out that we were at the same base at the same time, and just always unique in developing that community. And I love to share insights and different things that I pick up along the way on LinkedIn as well. And so they can find me and connect with me on there also.
That's wonderful. And we'll have that information as part of the show to make sure that you can get a hold of Jared. If you want to get a hold of us at the Leadership Void podcast, the leadershipvoid@gmail.com is where you will send that. Anything in terms of leadership, if you want to cover a specific topic or have a specific guest, write us there. We would love to have that. Jared, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, and what you're doing on the leadership scene. We really appreciate it.
Thank you both. I appreciate your time and inviting me on today.
And lastly, for those listening in, we trying to reach our goal of hitting our 200 subscriber. For those who are not part of our team, our tribe, hit our YouTube channel, The Leadership Void, follow us, subscribe, and you're going to enter into the drawing of a book called Standing Your O by Scott McGregor, autographed book that is. So please let us get to 200 with your help. We do this every Wednesday. We have another great dynamic guest, but also first and the 15th, we have the radio check, which is a time that we give back to our brothers and sisters in arms and those first responders, just to reach out, kind of like that, have that social connection. So we want to make sure we all are physically and mentally present. So just reach us 7:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the 1st and the 15th, like a payday in the military. We'll be there for you. And last but not least, we are sponsored by the home team of Round Point Mortgage Corporation. This great episode, as you can see behind me. So we're just honored to have them sponsor our show, and honored to have great leaders like Jared Narlock here. If you want to have speaking engagements, want to be coached, want to just improve your culture within and for those without, reach Mr. Jared as Peaceful Power Leadership. And we thank you, Jared, for being here.